and welcome to this session. My name is Kim, and today we're going to do a workout that focuses on the hips. So I know a lot of you have probably been sitting a lot, or you probably have been in a lot of Zoom meetings and maybe have been sitting for very long periods of times, and all that takes a toll on the hips. So this is a nice routine that is appropriate for people of all levels. If you're an absolute beginner, then I suggest really doing most of these poses with bent knees and listening to your body. If something hurts or if something hurts or feels uncomfortable, then come out of the pose. You always have that option. And let's begin. Actually, let me start over. So this is the first take. Hi, welcome. My name is Kim and welcome to this session. Today we're going to focus on the hips. So I know a lot of people have been sitting a lot, particularly during Zoom meetings, and that can take a toll on your hips. It tends to be one of those parts of the bodies that tends to get very tight and can be very uncomfortable. Oh, let me do another one, sorry. Hi, welcome. Today we're going to do a practice that focuses on the hips. I know a lot of people have been sitting a lot lately, particularly during Zoom meetings, and this routine is geared to loosen up those hip flexors and to, one more. Hello and welcome. My name is Kim, and today we're going to focus on a routine that is designed to loosen up the hips. I know a lot of people have been complaining about tight hips. A lot of us have been sitting, particularly during Zoom meetings, and the hips are just one of those areas of the body that tends to tighten up. So for today's session, you don't need any props. However, if you want to use yoga blocks or books, then I suggest grabbing two. And we're going to begin today just coming into a comfortable seated position. So you can either do a simple cross-legged position. If you want to take full or half lotus, go for it. But I want you to find a seat that feels very comfortable. You can gently rock from side to side. Get the sits bones grounded into the mat. Let your eyes close. We're just going to begin with some deep inhales and exhales. So inhale, filling up with breath. Exhaling through the nose or the mouth, releasing the breath. And find your own rhythm and pace here. And for today's practice, I want you to picture yourself in a very serene place. Maybe that's somewhere by a beach. Maybe it's somewhere even in your house, like watching your favorite movie or doing a favorite activity. But every so often, let that image come into your mind. Find some sort of peacefulness and groundedness throughout the practice. And when you're ready, open your eyes, and we're going to begin in a wide-legged forward fold. So if you're new or extremely tight in the hips, then keep your knees bent. And if you have your blocks, place them in front of you, and just let those arms stretch out. Imagine that you're trying to touch the wall in front of you. So if you don't have blocks, or if you want more of a stretch, then let those hands rest on the floor. Gaze forward, and then just let your back start to round here. If you want to place a block or a book underneath of your forehead, go for it. Otherwise, we're just going to allow the head to hang here. we're going to come back to an upright position. And we're going to start by taking the left foot and placing it parallel or perhaps touching that right thigh and sliding your right arm down the length of the leg. So you can either rest that forearm on the thigh or let your fingertips come very close to the foot. Reach, reach, reach with that left arm. Let the shoulder fall down the line of the back. And we're just getting a nice gentle side bend here. Stay here for anywhere from 3 to 5 breaths, your count. And when you're ready, come up and we'll switch sides. So you can give the legs a shake in between. And this time the right sole of that foot is either parallel or pressing into your thigh. Left leg's extended. Keep a bend in the knee if you wish. And either rest that left forearm on the thigh or reach, reach, reach towards the foot. And now we're getting that side stretch. You can play with shrugging that right shoulder by the ear and then dropping it down the back. Just reach, reach, reach. Stay here once again for 3 to 5 breaths, and then we're going to come up. And so from here, we're going to come into a wide-legged child's pose. So let your big toes touch. Send the buttocks back towards the heels. Extend the arms forward, and let your forehead come to rest on that mat. So you have the option of letting those forearms rest on your mat or come up onto the fingertips with spider-like fingers. You can imagine that somebody has hold of your wrist and is gently pulling you forward. Reaching here. Imagine that your spine is made out of putty and it is gently getting stretched. And then we're going to come into a puppy pose. So for puppy pose, we're going to take those arms forward and we're going to send the hips back. You can come up onto the toes if you like. Buttocks are coming back towards the heels. And we're just going to do this a few times, moving forward and back. And notice what is going on in your hip flexors. Time you send those buttocks back towards the heels, place your forehead on the mat, let your arms stretch forward, and just spend a couple of breaths here. And we're going to make our way into a tabletop pose, and we're going to come into a pigeon pose. So we're going to start by taking that right leg forward. And if you're tight in the hips, then let that right sole of the foot come towards the left thighs. Send that left leg back, and you want to press that kneecap into the mat. And you can either come up onto the fingertips, or you can press those the fists into the mat. But let's lift the chest here. Spend about 3 to 5 breaths here in our pigeon pose. Breathe in and out. And then you can either stay upright or come down to the ground. So I'm going to walk my hands forward, and I'm going to let my forehead come to rest on the ground. And if you want to place your a block underneath of your forehead, then you have that option. And you can always go from having the support underneath of your forehead to taking the forehead to the mat. We're going to spend a few rounds of breath here. So allow yourself to relax. And if you notice that there's tightness in the hips, imagine you could send the breath to those areas of tightness.
different than feeling pain. If at any point this feels painful or that you need to come out, then come out of this pose and press back into child's. If not, just stay here. We'll breathe here for about 3 to 5 more breaths. And on your next breath,
Come back up to an upright pigeon pose. Again, you can be on those fingertips or on the fist. Lift the chest. And then we're just going to send it back into another wide-legged child's pose. So buttocks come back towards the heels. Forehead comes to rest on the ground. And notice the difference between the right hip versus the left. Right hip might feel a lot more open. And then we're going to come into our tabletop. We're going to let our left leg come forward, and we're going to come back into a pigeon. So once again, on the fingertips or on the fists, let that chest come forward. Slide that right leg back. You want that knee to be pressing into the mat. Stay upright, or gradually come down to the ground. You can remain on the forearms.
You can let that forehead rest. But find a spot where you feel you can hang out for 3 to 5 breaths.
And we're going to lift the head. We're going to gaze forward. Come back to an upright position once again. Chest is lifted. And then just wiggle that leg back. Once again, coming into your wide-legged child's pose. Into a tabletop. We're going to spread those fingers wide. Imagine that your hands are like Spider-Man's and you really are trying to just press that entire hand to the mat. Then I'm going to come onto the toes and we're going to take our first downward facing dog. So allow yourself to move organically. If this is your first down dog of the day, then pedal out those feet. Gaze under one shoulder and then the other. And you can keep those knees bent. Heels can be off the ground. Come into the stretch that feels right for your body. Taking some breaths here. So don't be afraid to make the breath audible. Imagine you could send the breath into any areas of the legs or any areas of the body that are tight. And then we're going to gaze forward. We're going to walk the feet forward till we're at the front of the mat. We're going to roll up vertebra by vertebra. And we're going to come into a back bend. So arms come overhead. Hands can come to the chest so the fingers are pressing right against the sternum. And just coming back into a back bend. Come forward once again. So just take the arms up and over, gazing up towards the fingertips, finding that slight back bend, and then folding forward here. Bend those knees as much as you need. And then we're going to walk the legs back, coming into a down dog once again. Pedaling out those feet. Finding some movement here in the down dog. And then we're just going to hold for about 3 to 5 breaths. Again, bend those knees as much as you like. Let go of the idea of a perfect looking down dog or looking perfect in any of these poses.
about yoga is that you can adapt the pose to your particular body and your particular needs. And then we're going to send our right leg back behind us. So you can keep those hips level, or you can take the toes very high. You can imagine that there's paint on your big toe and you're going to leave a mark on the ceiling. And then we're going to bend that right knee. I want you to imagine that you're going to stamp the left side wall with that foot. You should feel this stretch in your left hamstring. If it's too intense, then bend the left knee. You can also come slightly on the toes. And we're going to straighten the leg, pedal out the feet once again. Hold down dog for a couple rounds of breath, and then we're going to take the left leg behind us. Again, you can keep the hips level, or you can lift that leg high. And then bend that left knee. And this time imagine you're going to stamp that right side wall with the left foot. Hold here for a few rounds of breath, your count. And then we're going to come back into our downward facing dog. You can come onto the balls of the feet and then drop the heels towards the ground. Then we're going to gaze forward. And we're just going to come into a plank pose. So keep your hips high. Always feel free to drop to those knees. Otherwise, bend those elbows. And we're going to come down on the ground. And then we're going to take our thumbs in line with the chest. And we're going to press up into a cobra. So you can keep this with a baby cobra, so there's little to no weight at all in those hands. Or press the ground firmly away from you, coming into a more active cobra. Stay here for a breath or two, and then we're just going to press back into a child's pose. So for this child's pose, your knees can be close together or far apart. And just allow yourself to relax here. Notice what is going on in those hips. How are they feeling? And then we're going to make our way into a tabletop. We'll come into a down dog for a breath or so. Again, you can come high on the toes and then drop the heels. And then just walk the feet to the front of the mat. Gaze up, look up and lengthen here. Take your forward fold, stay here for a breath or so, nod and shake the head if you like to release that neck, and then with the feet pressing into that mat, rise up to stand, coming back into our mountain pose, our Tadasana. And if you want to turn this into a back bend, then press the thumbs in towards the sternum, just coming back. And we're going to come forward, and we'll just spend a breath or two in our mountain pose. So you can let the eyes close. Just notice what is going on in the body. And then for this next one, we're going to do a balancing pose. So I'm just going to turn to face you, and we're going to do tree pose. We're going to take the feet about hip distance apart. Engage your core muscles. So I want you to think of navel back to the spine. We'll start by shifting the weight onto our left foot. And you have the option of either kickstanding those toes or taking the sole of that foot somewhere along the leg. You can take it high, low, somewhere in between, but we're going to avoid pressing into that knee joint. And hands can be in front of the heart. You can goalpost those arms. You can take them long and straight. It's up to you. Find a gaze point. Find something solid that isn't moving. So if you're practicing in front of a mirror, you probably don't want to gaze at yourself in the mirror. And slowly release, come out of it, shake it out. And we'll set up for the other side. So this time we're going to shift the weight onto our right leg. And you can either kickstand those left toes or press the sole of that foot somewhere along the shin, or take it up high towards the thigh. You choose. Hands are in front of the heart, and you can play with whatever arm variation that you want. And then we're slowly going to come out of the pose, and we're going to come down to sit. So for this next one, we're going to do a toe stretch. And if you have a history of broken toes or weak toes, then skip this. Just come to sit on the heels. Otherwise, I like this one because the toes are part of the body that seldom gets stretched. We're going to come onto those toes, and you're just going to send the buttocks back towards the heels. So the buttocks don't actually have to touch those heels. You're getting that toe stretch. If you want to place the buttocks on the heels, go for it. Hands are going to rest on the thighs. You're just sitting up tall and straight here. And then we're going to come into a tabletop position. If you want to use your blocks or your books, then have them here at the front of the mat. And we're going to start by taking our right foot forward and coming into a lunge. So we're just going to rock back and forth here. And we're just going to build up some heat. Notice what's going on in the hip flexor. So one thing I want to address is the difference between a tight hip, which just feels, quite tight. And maybe it's a tad uncomfortable when you're moving it back and when you're moving back and forth, but eventually it should start to feel better versus if you're feeling pain. So if you're feeling like your hamstrings or your hip flexors are like two tight rubber bands and they're going to pop, then that's a sign that you're probably going too deep. Take it down a notch or come out of the pose. So if you're familiar with my classes, I like to remind students to really, be aware of your body. Pain is never good, and trying to press your way through pain usually does not end well. So when you're done lunging, we're going to let the leg become still. Careful to not take the knee beyond the ankle. And you can either press those palms into the block, you can come onto the fingertips, or you can interlace the hands. And let your chest move away from that leg. Stay here. You can also goal post those arms if you like. In which case, engage that navel back to the thigh, so you're really challenging the core here. If you're moving or shaking this a bit, no worries. It shows how hard those muscles are working. You are doing work here. And then take the hands back to the knee or back to the block, and we're going to play with a half split pose. So there's a couple variations of this. This is Ardha Hanumanasana. You can simply come onto the heel, and the toes are coming towards the face, so the knee is still quite bent. Another option, if you're using blocks here, is to move the blocks back. Just wiggle that leg forward slightly. The leg may go straight. Look up and lengthen here. Again, you can be on those fingertips if you like, or the hands can remain on the block. And you want to let that forehead come towards the shin. Feel free to do so. And another option for those that have been practicing for a while is you can take a block, place it underneath of the thigh, and play with the full pose. So it's a split. Take the arms overhead and maybe even fold forward.
You can also do this without the block if you're really flexible. And then from here, we're just going to slide that leg back, move any props out of the way, and shake out the legs. You can also take a brief child's pose if you like. Just coming back to reset. Take a breath or two here. And we're going to do the same thing on our other side. So gaze forward. If you're using your props, have them handy. And this time we're going to take the left leg forward into a lunge. And we're just going to lunge here back and forth. And as you're warming up those hips, notice if this side is tighter than your other. So most of us have one side that is more open than the other. And if this is your tighter side, then take it down a notch. You don't have to lunge as deeply. If this is your more open side, consider going up a notch. Bodies tend to be amazingly asymmetrical. And I always encourage people to adjust for the differences in the body. So, from here, we're going to allow that leg to become still. If you want to come onto the fingertips, feel free to do so. If you want to interlace the hand and place it on the knee, then that's an option as well. Chest is lifted here. Think of a proud chest. And let those shoulders fall down the line of the back, rather than hunching them up by the ears. If you want to goal post those arms, then that's an option as well. And our hands are going to come back to the floor of the blocks. And if you want to play with half split, and maybe come up onto the heel. Bent knees are fine here. If you want to challenge yourself, and if you're using the blocks, take them further away. And also, again, come up onto the fingertips. And you can stay here, or drop that forehead to the shin. Forehead doesn't actually have to touch the shin. You'll probably feel a really intense stretch right now. Decide if you want to increase that stretch, or do you want to lighten up a bit, and coming out of it a bit. It's your choice. And then, if you want to play with the full pose, I highly recommend using a prop for that. Holding forward if you like. Just breathing here. And coming back up, wiggling it out. Wow, you're probably feeling that in the hip. And just taking your child's pose. And then you're going to lift your head, gaze forward, just come into a downward facing dog. Knees can be bent, you can come high on the toes. Walk out, pedal out those feet if you like. And then we're just going to take a walk, so we're going to walk the feet forward. And from here we're going to come into a squat. So we're going to turn the feet out, bend those knees, and drop the seat towards the ground. Let the hands come towards the chest. And I'm just going to turn so you all can see this. So one way to come into the squat is to have the bottom off the ground. If that is too intense though, then use a prop like a block or a book and place it underneath of the seat. Take some deep inhales and exhales here. And if you're seated on a block or some sort of support and you would like to challenge yourself, you can go down a notch, or you can take it away. to stay here in the squat, or just walk the hands forward and let your back round. And again, if you're using a block or a prop, if your forehead can rest on it, or you can just use it to gaze at, and you can imagine that your forehead is going to come towards that block. And we're just going to take a seat here, stretch those legs out. We'll take a quick forward fold before we do some more hip openers. So your knees can be very bent here if you like. The only thing not to do is to slam the backs of the knees towards the mat or the ground. Take your arms up overhead, and we're just going to come into our forward fold. If you can reach for the tops of the feet, great. If not, just take the hands to the ground. And just fold forward here with a nice rounded back. And then come back to an upright seated position. And from here, we're going to take Baddha Konasana. So, let the soles of the feet come towards each other. Interlace the hands underneath of the feet. And just let the knees come up and down. So this is commonly called butterfly pose. And you get to determine how fast or how slow that you move the knees. Ready. Let the knees become still. Open the soles of the feet like the pages of a book. Let the elbows press gently into those thighs and start to fold forward here. So unless you have incredibly open hips, you will probably feel this in your hip flexors. Imagine that you're going to place your chest right into the soles of the feet. Even if your chest is nowhere near the soles of your feet, just envision that. Allow yourself once again to send the breath to any areas of the body that are tight. And we're going to come back up to an upright position. And then we're going to take our feet out in front of us so the legs are more like a diamond shape. If you have a prop, this is a good time to use it. You can start with the highest level if you're unsure. Let your back round. Let your forehead come to rest on the block. You can play with lowering the height. Or if you don't need a prop, see if you can let your feet rest into your head rest into the feet. Up to an upright position once again. And then from here, we're going to play with the recline version of this pose. So you can come down by walking the hands behind you, resting on those forearms, lift your chest, and then place the back on the floor. Another way to come into this pose is to just come down with straight legs. You can just lower yourself down and then bend the knees, bring the soles of the feet towards each other. Decide which way you want to get here. And when you're here, you're going to take the arms overhead by the ears and just reach for the elbows. Let your chin come in towards the chest. And we'll breathe here. Let the eyes
eyes closed. Let yourself relax. If you have blocks, I'm going to place them under the knees. That's an option. Allow yourself to just relax completely here. As we come to the end of this session. And if you want to place your hands on the thighs and gently press, let those elbows press into the mat, then go for it. Take the legs out straight in front of us, and we're going to come into fish pose. So for here, we're going to place those hands right underneath of the shoulders. Let's see. We're going to come up on the, let's see. It's been a while since I did this from here. So for fish pose, we're going to, let's see, place those hands underneath of the back. We'll come into a supported fish pose. Let the elbows press. And just imagine that you're trying to press your chest to the ceiling. You can come over to the crown of the head, getting a nice throat stretch here. Breathing here for 3 to 4 breaths. Coming back down. And the arms and legs come out to the sides. Taking a breath here, but we're not quite finished. We still have a few finishing poses left. So we're going to bend the knees, take the heels in towards the seat, and we're going to set up for our bridge pose. So for the first one, the arms are by the sides, hands are pressing into the mat, and just lifting up. We're going to take the chest to the chin rather than taking the chin to the chest. Lifting up here. And staying here for anywhere from 3 to 5 breaths. Full inhales and exhales. And then slowly rolling down bit by bit. Second one, we're going to take the arms by the ears, backs of the hands are going to press into the floor, and we're going to lift up, lift, lift, lift. And rolling down bit by bit. And then for the third one, we're going to press up. We're going to interlace those hands, making a big fist. We're going to rock from side to side. Think of a marble trapped in between your shoulder blades and lifting up here. This may be the deepest back bend of the class. But it doesn't have to be. No pressure, no worries. Let your body decide what it wants to do. Your body will always be your best teacher. And then when you're ready, release the interlace of the hands. Come to lie down. We're going to hug the knees into the chest and just rock out our low back. So this should feel good. The simple knees into the chest. You want to take happy baby, then grab hold of the sides of the feet. You can imagine that you're trying to stamp those footprints to the ceiling, and the knees are falling in towards the underarms. And then let your body become still. Take your arms and legs out. We're going to set up for our Shavasana. So if you want to pause this video and spend a long time in Shavasana, I highly encourage it. Shavasana is great. And we're going to let the eyes close. We're going to allow ourselves to be really heavy. So imagine if this mat was made out of memory foam, that you could make an entire impression of your body. Everything is heavy.
Shavasana. We're gently going to wiggle our fingers and toes. The arms by the ears, legs come a little bit closer. And in your own time, roll to a side. Rest on your side for a couple rounds of breath. And then when you're ready, just make your way into any comfortable seated position on your mat. And we will close with a few rounds of breath. We'll just do a really brief meditation so hands can come to the heart. Gaze is down towards the fingertips. And we'll just take 3 full inhales and exhales through the nose. So inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, exhaling. And thank you very much for joining me. I hope to see you in person very soon, and I hope you enjoy this session. Namaste, and thank you very much. Have a great day.